That's the two explanations. And Ibn Rajab said, هذا قول جماعة من الأئمة. The second explanation is the explanation which was given by many of the scholars of Islam, such as Ishaq al-Marwazi, al-Shafi'i, وحكي مثله عن أحمد. So this was the statement mentioned by Ishaq al-Marwazi, who was a Shafi'i, and likewise it was narrated from Imam Ahmad. So that's dealing with the hadith. What does haya mean? What does shame mean? What does modesty mean? Abdullah, she defines modesty. Abdullah, she defines modesty. And maybe we should have mentioned this first. She says, قال النووي, Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, he said, قال العلماء, the scholars, they say, حقيقة الحياة, the reality of modesty and shame. So now you can measure. You can, for example, bring yourself to account. You can look into your own soul and ask yourself seriously and sincerely, do I possess shame? Do I possess modesty? Imam al-Nawawi said, the ulama, the scholars, they say that modesty and shame is a characteristic of which it encourages the person and would cause the person to stay away from that which is ugly, that which is disgusting, meaning that which is ma'asiyah, sinning. وَيَمْنَعْ مِنَ التَّقْصِيرِ فِي حَقِّ ذِي الْحَقِّ. And it would stop a person from falling short in a right, in fulfilling a right of one who has a right upon us. Inshallah we'll repeat that because it's important. She said, Imam al-Nawawi, the definition of al-haya. Again, so we can ask ourselves, do we possess al-haya? Al-haya, modesty. She said, قال النووي, Nawawi said, that the scholars, they say the reality of modesty and shame is a characteristic which encourages and causes a person to leave that which is qabih, that which is disgusting, ma'fiyah, sinning. And it prevents a person from falling short in a right of one who has a right upon us. He said, وَالرَّوَيْنَا عن أبي القاسم الجنيد. And we reported upon Abil Qasim, rahimahullah, that al-haya ru'yat al-ala'i, ay ni'm. والرؤية التقصير متولد بينهما حالة تسمى حياة. Then Abdullah, she continued. So she said, فالحياة صفة من الأخلاق الفاضلة. Therefore modesty and shame is from those characteristics and attributes which is considered to be from the most excellent of manners. So if you see a brother or a sister, if you see a sister out there being shameful and having modesty, فَعَلَمْ مِنَ الْبِدَايَةِ إِلَى النِّهَايَةِ, know immediately. And we're not talking about fake shame or fake modesty, because we see it often. When we go, for example, for a sit down, there's all this fake modesty. As soon as we get in the house, the modesty is out the window. We wake up in the morning, we have a heart attack from what we're hearing and seeing. Not talking about fake modesty. We're talking about the reality of modesty and shame. Because you can fool the people, but you can never fool Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can pull the covering over our eyes, but as we mentioned, you will never be able to fool Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So she said, this modesty is from the most excellent of manners. And it's an adornment for a person. Meaning, if a person possesses this characteristic, it's a sign of beauty, honor, that this person possesses. It's more important than any cheap pair of shoes she puts on her feet, or any cheap jacket she puts on her back, no matter what the price tag is. This stuff is materialistic, is cheap. She said, Abdullah, that this characteristic of shame is an adornment. It beautifies a person, makes them beautiful. She said, وَبِفَقْتِ الْحَيَاءِ, and if a person does not have shame and modesty, then this could lead to all types of evil. So for example, blood could be spilled, the honor of the people could be transgressed. People might fall into fawahish, and from fawahish, sinning, ma'asiyah. For example, fornication, drinking khamar, stealing. The elders will not be respected. The men will mix with the women. The woman will leave, for example, out the house naked. The woman will travel without any mahram. And likewise, the truth will be heard and it will be rejected. Study those things that she mentioned. If people don't have shame and modesty, look at some of the things that she mentioned. Blood will be spilled. Something which is witnessed. Why? Because the people don't have shame. Prophet ﷺ prohibited pointing a weapon of steel to your brother. Likewise, she mentioned honors. People will transgress against others' honor. Why? Because if you don't have shame, anything will come out your mouth. Anything. If you don't have shame, then fawahish is easy. Fornication, ma'asiyah, stealing. All of the sins can be committed. If you don't have shame, you won't respect your elders. So when your elder speaks to you, you speak to him in a disrespectful manner. You reply to him immorally. If you don't have shame, you find men pre-mixing with women. And it doesn't mean just from the kuffar, even from the Muslims. If you don't have shame, that's why you find brothers pre-mixing with sisters, because there's no shame. If there's no shame, the woman will leave her house mutabarrija, not clothed properly. If you don't have shame, the woman will travel without a mahram. All of this comes from no shame. And then Abdullah, she said, قال الفضيل ibn Iyad. Al-Fudayl ibn Iyad, one of the scholars of the Salaf, he said 5 things are from min alamat al-shaqawa, are from the signs of a person being unhappy and miserable. Whether they know it, and this is from us, whether they know it or whether they don't, whether they're in denial or whether they acknowledge it. You might think you're the most happiest person in the world. But if you're not obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you're not fulfilling the obligations and staying away from the prohibitions, verily you're in misery. 5 things are from the signs of misery, ash-shaqawa. Hardness of the heart. Hardness of the ayn, meaning you don't cry from the fear of Allah. Having little shame. Ar-raghba fi dunya, having too much desire for this world. And having too many hopes. Unrealistic hopes. And then Abdullah, she continued. Abdullah, she continued, she said, وَلَقَدْ مَدَحَ اللَّهِ إِبْنَةَ الرَّجَلَ الصَّالِحِ لِمَا اتصفت بِخُلُقِ الْحَيَاةِ. She said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praised the daughter of the righteous man due to her having the characteristic of modesty. And she mentioned in Surah Al-Qasas, and inshallah we'll read the translation of the ayah. The translation being of when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, and when he arrived at the water of Madian, he found there a group of men watering their flocks. And besides them, he found 2 women who were keeping back their flocks. He said, what is the matter with you? They said, we cannot water our flocks until the shepherds take their flock. And our father is a very old man. So he watered their flocks for them. Then he turned back to shade and said, my Lord, truly I am in need of whatever good that you bestow on me. Then there came to him one of the 2 women walking shyly. And this is the shahid, walking shyly. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praised her. She said, verily my father calls you that he may reward you for having watered our flocks for us. So when he came to him and narrated the story, he said, fear you not, you have escaped from the people who are zalimun. And this is Al-Qasas 23 to 25. So we find in the kalam of the Nabiyyin wal Mursaleen, the speech of the prophets and the messengers, we find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioning in the Quran, the Prophet mentioning in the Sunnah, that having shame and modesty is a praiseworthy characteristic. Again, due to people residing in these lands, it's something that we look down upon and we don't recognize the true fadila, excellence of this issue. And this is due to our environment and our surroundings, and that is why the surrounding has an effect upon the people. That is why the Prophet ﷺ said, كُلُّ مَوْلُودٍ يُولَدُ عَلَى الْفِطْرَةِ. Every child is born upon the fitrah, the natural inclination to accept the tawheed. But their parents make them a Christian, or a Jew, or a fire worshipper. Meaning, the surroundings affect